Well,
The Dukes of Limburg and Brabant and the Flemish militia, seeing how the battle was going, turned around even before setting up for battle. The French knights attacked.
I'm like imagining from their point of view, they come out, they see like they're losing, they're like, all right guys, turn around.
Talking about history,
All right,
sometimes put
Anglo-French
too much
War.
emphasis on the role of battles and wars
Another
over the
suggestion.
underlying political and social structures. But some battles are truly decisive for the course that our history takes. One of these is the Battle of Bouvines, in which three great powers of feudal Europe fought in the year 1214.
Alright, I
The outcome of
haven't
this
heard of this
battle
one
had
before.
rippling effects on the development of both England and France, shaping their political and social structure for the following centuries, but also had less visible effects on the rest of Europe. The sponsor of this video, Field of Glory 2 Medieval, is a deep, historically accurate and expertly researched turn-based tactical game.
Oh, one of those type
by
of
the
games.
Duke of
I was
Normandy,
thinking about going and actually listening to it because it sounded interesting, but then he said turn-based game. Like, I played enough of those.
Which culminated at the Battle of Hastings in 1066. The crowns of England and France were deeply intertwined. As Dukes of Normandy, the English kings had to pay homage to the French kings for their fiefs as the feudal laws of the time dictated. In the year 1135, following the death of Henry I, the English realm entered into a 2-decade-long civil war known as the Anarchy, which ended with Henry II ascending to the English throne in 1154. Henry was a member of the French Plantagenet family, and he had inherited the counties of Anjou and Maine from his father, Geoffrey, and the Duchy of Normandy from his mother, Empress Matilda, daughter and sister of the previous English kings. In 1152, Henry also married Eleanor, heiress of the Duchy of Aquitaine, which covered most of western France. So when Henry...
This is such a weird dynamic. Ugh. It's like what all my French viewers have been telling me. Like, these English kings aren't even English and French. Freaking hell. Oh, dude, that's such a... Oh, I can hear all the nationalist English people crying in the comments, or not even comments, but like in the background, in the corner.
Henry sailed to England to be crowned as King of England. He was already the greatest feudal lord of the French realm. The French monarchs had long lost the power and prestige that the Carolingian kings enjoyed, with royal power diminishing in the 10th century.
Wait, so really and truly, he colors this as red, but this isn't even English territory. It's still French territory? Well, yeah. This is still French territory. It's just that he is the lord of that land, right? But this is under direct jurisdiction of England, so... No, he should have colored that a different color.
The Capetian dynasty had been on the throne since 987, but they controlled only a small part of the kingdom directly, a region centered around the capital Paris and a few exclaves. The rest of the realm was governed by powerful counts and dukes, with whom the kings often quarreled for power and influence.
That sounds like how Mexico is, like... The government of Mexico only controls like 20% of the entire country, and the rest is basically ran by cartels, basically. And that 20% is basically the area around the capital. Crazy. That's what it sounds like.
Now that half of the kingdom was under the rule of the Plantagenet dynasty, frictions between the two families soon commenced. In 1159, Henry began to extend his influence further onto the continent by attacking the Count of Toulouse, who was rescued by the French King Louis VII.
What is this?
What followed was a century of low-intensity
what kings and generals? What are you using here?
And the House of Plantagenet.
Usually he uses like Total War stuff, but that's a different game that he's using to demonstrate that.
Who ruled the so-called Angevin Empire. Henry was successful in putting one of his sons on the throne of the Duchy of Brittany, and nearly managed to have his son become the heir to the French throne, but he had to often confront his rebellious sons, who would forge alliances with the French kings Louis VII and his son Philippe II.
Stop, bruh. This AI stuff needs to stop.
In the year 1199, Henry's youngest son John ascended to the throne following the death of his older brother Richard the Lionheart. To consolidate his throne,
Richard the Lionheart, England's most prized national hero, whatever. The same hero I didn't give a blast about England. Oh, I will never stop bringing that up. I always find that so hilarious to me. Like, I talk about how French people can be a bit snobby, but like English people, like low key, bro. Like English people, they can be a bit snobby to low key. I can't even lie. They can be a bit snobby too.
First had to defeat his nephew Arthur, supported by French King Philippe. Philippe was a shrewd politician and diplomat, and wanted to use Arthur as a pawn to weaken the Plantagenet position in France, splitting up their territory. In the subsequent peace of 1200, Philippe dropped his support for Arthur and confirmed John's titles and possessions, but he obtained the reaffirmation of his position as suzerain of John. In 1202, a new war sparked between the two monarchs, following an internal marriage dispute in the Duchy of Aquitaine between John and one of his vassals of the Lusignan family. The outcome of this war was the mysterious death of Arthur and the seizure of Normandy, Anjou, Maine and Brittany by Philippe, confining John's possessions in France to just Aquitaine. Philippe would also expand his influence in Auvergne in 1209. The English king did not accept the outcome of the previous war, and already in 1206 he made an unsuccessful attempt to retake his French territories. He soon started to look for allies to curb the power of the expanding French king. He acknowledged the existence of the Holy Roman Empire. Following the death of Henry IV
wondering
of the
about that
family in 1197, the imperial throne had been given to Otto IV of the Welf family, thanks to the support of Pope Innocent III. This sparked a feud between the two families, which would give the name to the two political factions of Guelphs and Ghibellines. In 1208, the head of the Hohenstaufen faction, Philip, Duke of Swabia, was assassinated, leaving Otto without much opposition in Germany. Emboldened by his position, the emperor went against the Pope and the Kingdom of Sicily, intending to weaken the Holy See and take the South Italian throne for himself. But his actions backfired hard. He was met by papal excommunication and a rebellion of German princes, who in 1211 elected the young Frederick II, King of Sicily, and son of the previous emperor Henry IV, as the new emperor.
Shaking my head, bro.
The Plantagenets and the Capetians,
no heaven for you. That is
had their stake in this struggle for power. Otto was also supported by the English monarchy, as he was related to them and had lived at their court, while Philippe supported the young Frederick to contrast his rival. Someone else who had been excommunicated was King John of England, after a dispute with the Pope on the nomination of the Archbishop of Canterbury. Although it had little effect in the internal policies of the state, and it was soon resolved in 1213, it gave Philippe of France an excuse to invade his rival. In 1213 he assembled a fleet in Normandy, which was destroyed in the port of Dem by the Earl of Salisbury, and raided the lands of the Count of Flanders, who had refused to join the prepared invasion. John thus formed a league against the French king. He was joined by Otto of Welf, who came to his help not only on the grounds of friendship with the Plantagenets and to undermine the French support of his rival, but also because he hoped that a grand victory against the King of France would rally the rebellious princes to his banner. The Count of Boulogne, Renaud, and the Count of Flanders, Ferdinand, also joined the league, as they had historical ties to the English monarchy and economy, and the latter had an active dispute with the king regarding the ownership of some towns. Their strategy was to attack the Kingdom of France in a two-pronged assault from the east and the south, which would have converged on Paris. In February of 1214, John of England sailed to La Rochelle, accompanied by mercenaries as the barons of England had refused to join him, and he sent his half-brother William, Earl of Salisbury, to Flanders, with money to assemble a mercenary army there. John campaigned in Poitou and Anjou in the spring, with the goal of drawing the French army from the eastern border. Philippe decided to defend his territories by leaving a third of his men under his son Louis to confront John in the Loire Valley, while he would head for Flanders to raid the region. In Anjou, John's army was confronted by Louis's detachment while they besieged Roche-aux-Moines. The English monarch retreated, either because of cowardice or because he had reached his goal of splitting his enemy's forces, but suffered some casualties in his retreat.
So basically, this is basically like a prelude of the 100 Years' War. This is basically what this is, basically a prelude of the 100 Years' War in a nutshell.
At the start of June, the Emperor finally arrived in Flanders with his small army, as only 4 German nobles had joined him, but he was soon joined by the Dukes of Brabant, Limburg and Lorraine, the Counts of Flanders and Boulogne, and the mercenaries of Salisbury. By the 26th of July, the French king had just arrived at the Flemish town of Tournai with his army, while the Allied army was encamped 12 kilometers south at the castle of Mortagne. The French army numbered approximately 1,300 knights, 300 light cavalry, and 4,000 to 5,000 infantrymen.
Bro,
the Allied army was composed of 1,500 knights, mostly from Flanders and Hainaut, and 7,500 Flemish foot soldiers and mercenaries.
Is this a game that he's sponsoring? That turn-based game? Is that what this is?
As Philippe's scouts had reported the position of the enemy army, he decided the following day
to get into the actual battle itself
remain encircled and to defend his heartland. On the morning of Sunday the 27th, his army departed in good order along the old Roman road between Tournai and Lille, with the carts in front, followed by the infantry and the cavalry in the back. He also sent a contingent of knights from Burgundy and Champagne to cover his retreat. The imperial camp received the news of the French retreat, and a council of war convened and decided to attack at once, taking advantage of their superior numbers and hoping to cut part of the army off at the village of Bouvines, where the river La Marque flowed. They marched at once along a single road through a forest, which greatly prolonged the marching column. Philippe knew that his enemies were on the move, but he was unsure if they were heading to Tournai or towards him, as it was forbidden by the church to fight on a Sunday. While he was having a meal in the village of Bouvines, he received the news from his rearguard. The Count of Flanders with 1,200 knights and squires had led the vanguard and engaged in small skirmishes with the Burgundian knights. The French king and his commander, the Bishop Guérin, recalled his infantry who had crossed the river and positioned his troops with himself at the center, with a right wing composed of only heavy and light cavalry and a mixed left wing. The Allied army had failed to surprise the French, and their long marching column meant it took a considerable amount of time to draw up for battle.
I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm pretty sure France is gonna win this. I don't know who wins, but objectively speaking, France at this point in time, yeah, their knights get rid of the snobbiness. Yeah, their knights are just kind of the best in Europe at this point, if I'm not mistaken.
And Hainautian knights under the Count of Flanders composed the left wing. In the center, the Emperor was positioned with his few knights and half of the infantry, where a cart with the imperial insignia was located, while to the right, Salisbury's mercenaries were positioned in a circle to cover the Count of Boulogne's cavalry. The battle started soon after noon on the south side. a contingent of light cavalry was sent out by the French to probe the Flemish lines. Some of the knights took the bait, starting to skirmish with the light cavalry and finding success. Then, the knights from Champagne charged against the disordered lines, killing many of the unarmored horses and taking a number of knights captive. The Count of Flanders attempted to save his men, charging into battle with his retinue, but he was met by the full force of the French right wing, who broke the enemy line and encircled the enemy knights in a fierce melee. The heavier armored French knights managed to best their Flemish counterparts in the duels that ensued.
That's why what did I say? What did I say? Of course. When the French weren't snobby, they were literal juggernauts, man. Like, come on now.
After a cavalry charge, and after a few hours of battle, the Flemish ranks were thinned until their commander was forced to surrender. Meanwhile, the center of the two armies had drawn up for battle. As the French infantrymen took position in front of the king and his retinue, they were charged by Otto's mass of mercenaries and knights. The French levies were not of the same quality as their mounted counterparts, so they were thrown back. The infantry line had been kept thin to spread it out and not be encircled, so the German knights easily punctured it, but they were met by the king's knights. During the fight, some of the German infantry managed to push through and nearly captured the French king, but the French knights on the left wing counterattacked and routed the Emperor's knights, mopping up the infantry that had penetrated the line. Soon the center collapsed, and the German knights sacrificed themselves to allow their emperor to escape from the battlefield.
Respect, 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 respect. Shout out to the Germans for doing that. Respect to Germans for that. We gotta put more respect onto Germany and Germans, man. We got, like, seriously.
Just the Allied right wing was remaining. They came too late to join the other two battle groups, so here the pikemen had positioned themselves in a circle to cover the knights, who launched sorties out of this small strongpoint. After a few attacks, the knights of the Count of Boulogne were defeated and captured. The Dukes of Limburg and Brabant and the Flemish militia, seeing how the battle was going, turned around even before setting up for battle. The French knights attacked.
Oh my gosh, that's so hilarious. Bro, imagine, I'm like imagining from their point of view, they come out, they see like they're losing, they're like, all right guys, turn around.
Attacked the fortress of Pikes a few times, suffering considerable damage.
But
by the end of the day,
that's too funny.
Mercenaries were surrounded and beaten. Each side suffered around 1,000 casualties, but the French army had taken a considerable number of soldiers prisoner, including 131 knights and 5 counts, with the Counts of Boulogne and Flanders and the Earl of Salisbury among them. The consequences of the Battle of Bouvines would be immense on the course of European history. The great monetary and territorial losses for John angered the population of England, with many barons rebelling against the English king. They forced him on.
Yeah, but why would the English even care? Technically speaking, those weren't even English territories. Those were, technically speaking, still a part of the French realm, if I'm not mistaken. Those weren't even a part of the English realm. It's just that this whole dynamic relationship between
on the 15th of June 1215.
Look, if somebody want to explain that in the comments, explain it in the comments.
To sign the Magna Carta, a document that granted a series of freedoms and rights to the freemen of England. This document is important for the legal system, being the basis for common law and granting some important rights, such as the habeas corpus, the right to not be arbitrarily arrested, and establishing the concept that no man is above the law. It also created a council of barons to judge the actions of the king, and this was the bedrock on which the parliamentary monarchy that would later develop was based. The French monarchy took...
Wait, I didn't know that this war was the war that inspired the Magna Carta. I know what the Magna Carta is. I mean, I've been learning about that since freaking middle school in America. But they never really taught us, like, that this war was the war that inspired that. That's actually quite cool, actually.
Another road. Having defeated his main rivals, Philippe had limited the English possessions on the mainland to just the Duchy of Aquitaine. He had also greatly expanded the territory directly controlled by the crown, strengthening its authority. It also led to the later incorporation of the county of Toulouse, weakened by the Albigensian Crusades, and the curbing of the influence of Flanders, the richest and most populous region of Europe at the time. The great success that Philippe had in consolidating royal power garnered him the nickname Augustus, and he has been called the Father of France, as he set the course of his kingdom on that of centralization.
Not only was he handsome, but the man knew how to use his brain too. Crazy, bruh. Look, you know how rare it is to have a handsome guy who's actually smart and capable? That's actually extremely rare. Like, think about that for a second. Like, extremely rare.
The defeat of Otto would be detrimental for him, as he would no longer hold any power and he would soon die. He would be the only emperor of the Welf dynasty, and his death would pave the way to the ascension to the imperial throne of Frederick II, King of Sicily, who belonged to the Hohenstaufen dynasty. More videos on medieval battles are on the way, so make sure you are subscribed and have pressed the bell button. Please consider liking, commenting and sharing, it helps immensely. Our videos would be impossible to make without our kind patrons.
Hashashin. I'm sorry, I'm reading. Anyways, look, man, you made it all the way to the end of this video. Make sure you go like and subscribe. Go check out my other reactions on my channel. I have plenty of other reactions on my channel at this point. Great video, great suggestion, man. Thank you for watching. And goodbye.